What's up, all my plant lovers? Devin is here, and we are in the heat of the summer. It's about 95 degrees out right now here in eastern Pennsylvania, zone 6B. And I wanted to do a video of some of my favorite low maintenance perennial plants in my garden. Some of the plants that I find to be top performers with kind of the least amount of work or the least opportunity for unsightliness, things such as that for this time of the summer. This is kind of, we're starting to get into that transition into the end of summer, and it leaves a lot of our gardens kind of exasperated, a little bit worn out, and a little bit tired with a lot of maintenance, you know, removing a lot of the old flowers that have come and gone. So what are some of my favorite plants for this time of the season? All right, first and foremost, that would be lavender. For most of us, our lavender is going to start to bloom kind of around end of June, well, maybe middle of June, early July. And even after these plants have finished blooming, you really don't even need to deadhead them. They still look phenomenal. It has an absolute interest even once those blooms have kind of changed from that iconic lavender color into a more brownish tone. And right here I have a Grosso lavender. I also have a couple other phenomenal lavenders growing behind me over there, which I'll show you guys here in a minute. And I find that this plant requires almost nothing. I don't water it, I don't prune it, I don't care for it. I have some videos showing how to take care of it in the springtime to do that early season kind of refresher, so they don't get a little bit overgrown and end up being overly woody with bald spots in the middle. So that is an important thing to do at that time of year, but in this time of year, they're stunning plants, very low maintenance, and if you have a hot, dry garden, these plants are winners. So another plant that is absolutely low maintenance and phenomenal at this time of year would be Buddleia butterfly bush. It does have a little requirement of going and removing the old flowers, but that's okay. It's not, the flowers are so large, it only takes, maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute to remove all of your dead flowers, and I do it like once every 2 weeks, so it's quite easy. And at this time of year, if you are removing those old flowers, they're continuing to push new flowers out, and they are oh so fragrant. They're phenomenal, and they are, frequented by, I got a bee flying by me right now. The pollinators absolutely love and adore them. And with their silvery kind of light greenish foliage, very drought tolerant plants. I don't water this. This is with some lavender as well. So they have very similar conditions, and it's a phenomenal low maintenance plant. I particularly like to grow some of the dwarf varieties. They're slower growers. They tend to stay a little bit smaller. This is a buzz series plant. And also these newer cultivars are not invasive. So if you do live somewhere like Washington or California where you're not allowed to grow a lot of Buddleia, these ones you can grow because they are not invasive. They don't set seed and they don't spread that seed all over the place like those invasive varieties of Buddleia do. So if you want to enjoy butterfly bush again, look for some of the varieties that are the dwarf varieties, the newer cultivars, and in the descriptions they will generally list that yes, these are non-seeding, non-invasive varieties. I also like to grow, I have a couple varieties called from Walter's Gardens and Proven Winners that are smaller, topping off at around 3 feet tall, so they're a perfect stature. This is about full grown right here, but I also do have a video showing how to prune them at the beginning of spring to ensure that they don't overgrow where you've planted them. Very important, very robust plants that can handle being chopped down all the way to the very, 6 inches every single spring. 3 months ago, this was 6 inches tall after I cut it back, and look how much it has grown since then. So truly wonderful plants, fast growing, full of blooms, and I have kind of a compendium of 3 different colors growing together right here, which is super cool, super fun, and delightfully vanilla fragrance. You can't grow wrong with butterfly bush, I'm telling you. Very winter hardy as well. So by now you guys know I love my ground covers because I love the way that they cover the ground with a blanket of thick foliage. They just totally add a whole extra dimension of depth to your garden. So if you don't garden with ground covers yet, start doing so. I have tons of videos all about other ground covers that I grow and absolutely adore. 2 of them that I am so happy I planted when I first moved in here would be this Dianthus Vivid Pink. This guy, I can't express my delight enough for this Dianthus. This is, they're also called cheddar pinks. Pinks refer to like the little serrated edges. I guess that's a terminology in like engineering for, maybe engineering for, or manufacturing for a type of like blade that is used with those kind of serrated edges. In England, I believe. Anyway, this plant, it blooms quite early in May, and then you can go back, chop it off. I have a video showing exactly how to do it. You chop it back, and a month later, it's back in bloom. Absolutely stunning how fast these just reproduce blooms. And it's growing right next to a bunch of different Stonecrops or hardy sedums. Both of these plants hardy to like zone 4. Here in 6B, like I have absolutely zero worries of these disappearing in the winter time. And this is also part of my hot, dry garden bed. So it's a garden that gets no additional water from the, beyond the rainfall. So just keep that in mind. I got something crawling on me. So just keep that in mind. 2 wonderful ground covers for your hot, sunny, dry gardens. The Stonecrops and these varieties of the cheddar pinks, the Dianthus. They're so good, and they have a nice cinnamony kind of fragrance. So another very low maintenance perennial would be Heucheras. Look how fantastic these look. I planted these back in early May. They were in just little 4-inch pots, and they've doubled in size from then. And you know, we haven't had rain for a while, and I thought that these would be kind of looking a little bit sad, a little bit tired out, but they look awesome. They look so happy and sprightly and just, you know, perky as can be. Now this is a garden that gets early morning sunlight, and then from around, I don't know, I would say between like 8 and like 9 or 10 it gets sunlight, but then beyond that it's in a shaded location. That's pretty important, because if it was in more sunlight it probably would be too stressed out. But as we know, right plant, right place is the key to success. So if you have areas that have decent shade but do get some good sunlight, Heuchera is the way to go. I believe all of these are going to be hardy to zone 5. They probably won't succeed beyond zone 8. Zone 9 is probably going to be too warm around the season for these to really be happy. But for me, I'm thrilled. Some of them are starting to flower, and now I just have to think about what I want to kind of put in between them to just kind of create a little bit more tapestry effect, a little bit more of a beautiful scene. So definitely thrilled with how these have been performing. So now another very low maintenance perennial that is also ecologically a superstar would be Asclepius Tuberosa. This was the butterfly weed. Now the reason I particularly like this one is because the butterfly weed, the tuberosa, would be the actual species, is that this is a plant that can do very well in dry conditions. So this gets pretty hot afternoon sunlight. The sun beats down, and I don't provide any, like I've been saying all along, I don't really provide any additional water throughout my garden. I just don't have time for it. I let plants, you know, they either thrive or they fall by the wayside. And this one has been such a thriving plant. It's just starting to bud up right now, which is awesome. But the reason why it's also very important ecologically speaking is that this is a plant that the monarch butterflies will lay their eggs on, and the monarch caterpillars actually will consume the foliage. It is the only plant that the monarch caterpillars will actually feed off of. So if you want to help the monarch butterfly population, planting some Asclepius tuberosa for your dry gardens, Asclepius incarnata, which is a pink flowering variety, or pink flowering species, is more for your wet gardens. It's called swamp milkweed would be a common name. That's for your more wet areas, but for your dry gardens, the butterfly weed is awesome. And you know, growing them kind of all together provides this nice little look. This should fill out fantastically over the next couple years. Very fast growing plant. I planted all of these this year, and you can see how much they've grown, really exploded in growth. Hardy to like zone 3 perhaps, but they can also be grown probably up to zone 9. So wide range for our butterfly weed. So I wanted to continue the video here at my uncle's townhouse. He has been away for the last 6 weeks or so. Nobody has been doing any tending to the garden. Doesn't even look like the grass has been cut. No one waters, no one is weeding. It gets really hot, intense sunlight. So I wanted to show some of the perennials here in this garden that are also holding up to the climate, looking good, and are essentially low maintenance perennials here in this garden. So let's start right here with Verbena Bonariensis. This is like the tall verbena. Now this is hardy to zone 7, but they will kind of self-seed in the wintertime. So they're kind of like a quasi perennial, I would say. We're in zone 6B here, so it's kind of right on the cusp, but total drought tolerant plant, flowering pretty well right here, and it has a nice kind of upright, elegant look that kind of sways in the wind when the wind is blowing. Now this plant is probably my favorite plant blooming in the garden right now. This is Phlox Paniculata Jeana. Now it's a taller variety. The flower panicles are smaller. You can find some that are much larger, but not only is it incredibly fragrant, smells like almost like biscuits, like baking. It's just phenomenal. It's a real stunning perennial for the pollinators. At a trial over at Mount Cuba Center, you saw my video about native plants that were growing at Mount Cuba Center. They trialed a bunch of different Phlox Paniculata, and they found that this is the most pollinator friendly of all the phlox. So if you want a really low maintenance, very winter hardy, sun loving, freely flowering, fragrant, pollinator friendly plant, Phlox Paniculata Jeana is a must-have. I need to get this in my garden. Maybe I'll do a division and take some, bring it back with me, put it into my pollinator garden that I'm growing over at my house. Now, one of the reasons why pollinators love these phlox is all these individual florets there's just so many of them because they're so small. There's so many, and it really makes just like a feasting ground for all of the pollinators. Now this guy is filling out this corner beautifully. My uncle likes to talk about how the importance of putting rounded shrubs at the corners of the homes to kind of soften the edges, and this one is doing really well. He planted one here and another one to my left, and it kind of just creates this nice soft round edge. Now this is a Hydrangea Paniculata. I believe this one is Pinky Winky, I'm not sure, but the Hydrangea Paniculatas, it's hardy to like zone 3. Of all the hydrangeas, these are probably one of the more drought tolerant species. You know, the big leaf hydrangeas, the arborescens, the smooth hydrangeas, right now they're all looking super wilted. We've had 95-degree weather for the last week, and like I was saying, no one is here watering. We haven't had any rain, and the leaves aren't wilted. The flowers look great. The flowers are huge. They're beautiful, and these flowers are big. Like they're like the size of a football. So they have a really gorgeous presence, and these Pinky Winkies have a really nice strong stem, so you're not having to worry about them flopping over or anything like that. The Hydrangea Paniculata is a really wonderful hydrangea for your hot, sunny, drier garden areas. And these ones are gonna live for a super long time. And the great thing is these flowers will actually start to take on some pink tones as we start to move we're in the end of July, so moving from the end of July into probably August, September, they'll start to take on some pink tones, which is why they call it the Pinky Winky. And then right here is another really wonderful shrub. This is a Ladrostromia, a crepe myrtle, but a shrub version. You can see the nice little papery crepe-like flowers down here, which, you know, that's why they call it the crepe myrtle. I'll do a close-up here in a second, but rather than having like a multi-stemmed, large, tall shrub tree, this is like a more, not rounded, but smaller in stature shrub style. Now this is I think this is a Proven Winners Infinitini crepe myrtle. So it has a really nice form. This is about as tall as it'll get. So it really kind of helps to fill out this front garden, but it doesn't block the windows. So that's really important. Most of the crepe myrtles, they grow into 20, 25 foot tall trees or multi-stem shrubs. Definitely much more shorter, bushier, more compact. These sort of shrub style crepe myrtles. Very easy zone 6B, zone 7 hardy perennial, and they're really glossy foliage, makes them quite drought tolerant. Now, while we are here at the end of July, these are kind of the first of the crepe myrtle flowers to just get started. You can see all the other flower buds just getting going. So maybe in the next 2 weeks, this should be full of beautiful purple flowers. So I need to come back and take some pictures while I'm here. Of course, we always like to say Oriental Lily bulbs, they're too dumb to die. You plant them and they just come back year after year after year, assuming you don't have deer that are gonna come eat them. If these were in my garden, the deer would definitely eat them. But these ones are blooming right now. They're kind of just finishing out. Look how many flowers there are. It smells like heaven over here. Winter hardy, like zone 3, a very low maintenance perennial. All you have to do really at the end of the season is cut it down and add the spent flowers and foliage to your compost. Now, while I may be sweating, this little guy is looking just cool as can be. This is a Kniphofia or Kniphofia, so many different ways of pronouncing this one. This is the popsicle series. Now these ones, they have really lovely strappy foliage. They kind of look like they could be almost like a daylily, but they in terms of their foliage, it's actually a little bit more robust foliage. It's kind of maybe between like a daylily and a liriope foliage, somewhere in the middle. But the flowers are so vibrant, so bright, and there's so many little baby ones coming in here. And this guy, these are native down to South Africa, so they don't mind the hot, intense summer. And they're very, despite being from South Africa, they're very winter hardy. So you can grow them here in Pennsylvania. These are probably hardy to zone 5. So I know we grow them at my family's home in Indiana as well. Really tough power perennial. And the popsicle series is really nice, compact stature. So I love the way that these ones grow. They kind of just stay put. They don't really go crazy, go wild, but they do exactly what you want them to do. Check out how vibrant they are. How many flowers are coming up, just starting down there. You see those little baby flowers just starting? How adorable. Now with me over here is a perennial that actually gets hated on quite a bit. This is the Rose of Sharon, Hibiscus syriacus. I particularly love these ones. I have these growing into a hedge by my deck out at home. Now these are the first editions, Rose of Sharon, what is that? I think they're like Fiji would be the name. Now these ones, they're not gonna go crazy self-seeding all over the place. They also aren't gonna get like crazy tall either, but they do fill in really pretty well. Now he has these growing kind of to try to block the view to the air conditioning unit, and it's doing pretty well. He planted these 2 years ago from small little 1-gallon pots, and they have absolutely exploded in growth, and they're full of flowers. Now they do have some spent flowers that look a little bit bad, but just the size, the low maintenance aspect of this plant, that he does nothing to keep these looking good and nice and full. I don't know, maybe he pruned them back in the springtime. That's what I do with mine. Kind of at the beginning of, kind of in like the beginning of May is when I like to cut mine back to create a really nice, sturdy, strong foundation of growth on my Rose of Sharon. And that also keeps them from getting too tall and a little bit leggy, and it helps them get really nice and bushy. And these are exceptionally winter hardy and clearly drought tolerant. Where I'm baking here in the sunlight. These guys have been getting hammered with sun all summer long, 90-degree weather, no additional water source beyond the rain, and they look pretty fantastic. Clearly these are iconic hibiscus flower shape, but they're much smaller than like the tropical hibiscus. They are beloved by pollinators. There's a few bees here running around, that's for sure. And last but not least is this Russian sage. If you haven't seen my video about Russian sage, go check that video out. Surprisingly a very popular video, I guess because a lot of people look for long seasons of flowers from drought tolerant plants, and this one cannot be beat. The silvery foliage, we remember the silvery foliage is a good indicator that it's probably gonna be quite drought tolerant. And these have been blooming for, I don't know, 6 weeks already. They're growing in this like rock bed where drainage is really sharp. So there's really very additional moisture even when it rains. And they're just a gorgeous plant to fill out this like front section right by the road. The only maintenance that we do for these is at the beginning of spring, we just cut it back all the way down. If you don't do that, they will get a little bit floppy and have some bald spots in the middle. So absolutely make sure that you do cut it back so that it can regenerate new growth every single season, and it will do so just fine. This is all growth from this year, all right? Fast growing plants, very winter hardy. Oh, so here I had to go back to the shade. I was getting too hot and my camera was about to explode from all the heat. But anyways, that's a look at some of my favorite perennials that handle the heat with ease, that are very low maintenance plants, and even look good in the middle of summertime when a lot of the garden is starting to look a little bit sad, a little bit worn out. These plants are still looking their best, and they're gonna help bridge the gap into our autumn garden. So if you're looking for more perennials to add to your gardens that are drought tolerant, low maintenance, and look good for a long period of time, definitely consider adding some of these to your garden. Anyways, if you have any more questions, leave a comment below. I always try to answer them. And go check out my website, plantvibrations.net. You can find links to all sorts of great stuff. I'm doing consultations these days, so consider booking a consultation with me if you need a little bit extra helping hand to get your green thumb growing. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me here on Plant Vibrations. I'll catch you soon. Ciao.